AskReddit. What was the worst/craziest thing you saw at a stag/bachelorette party? Downtown Nashville, there were two bachelorette parties in the same bar that was on the smaller side compared to others. Both brides were blonde Barbies and wearing next to nothing, as was their wedding parties. Both parties were dancing in front of the stage, and one of the bridesmaids from Party A fell into the bride of Party B. Next thing you know, the bride of Party B smacks the girl who bumped into her face across the face and throws her drink on her. Next thing you know, there is a full-on Donnybrook going on with 12 to 14 girls fighting in front of the stage, complete with hair pulling, slapping, hitting, tops getting torn off, drinks getting thrown, as well as shoes. The bouncer was doing the best he could but couldn't control the chaos, and most of the patrons made their way away from the mess. Two members of the band stopped playing and tried to break it up. It took a while, but things died down, but the best part was that the lead guitarist just kept playing and whipped up Van Halen's Eruption while the fight was happening. Why is it that when people drink, they think they are Bruce Lee and want to fight? Emotions were already high. Some ladies may have overdressed, then you add a bit of liquor and fists fly. Not gonna lie, it sounds pretty dope to be in a fight with Eruption playing in the background. I asked the guitarist after the set why he didn't get involved, and he was like, "Yeah, frick that shit, man. I ain't getting beat up for no good reason, so I figured I'd add to the experience." It was pretty cool. The bachelorette party took place at a sports club where football games were being broadcast on television. They invited a stripper to perform, and among other typical bachelorette fare, they had squirty cream, a bride eating a banana out of his panties, and so on. But during the entire thing, an elderly man was sitting on a bar stool and watching the football. He was too obstinate to move, having been there before they arrived. He is standing about a foot away from the soiled male stripper, his pint, his eyes fixed on the screen, and still. He took the definition of football fan to another level. Nudity cannot distract this fellow. He's the owner and not going to give up his seat or miss the game. There used to be this karaoke bar in my town that completely ran at a loss because no one was ever there, but if you wanted to, you could take it over with a group of friends. You just had to let the owner, who was also the bartender, sing every 5 songs. The owner was third-wheeling hard and running his business to the ground. He must be rich to be running a business at a loss like he can sing his heart out when no one is there. Got a text to come to the bridge. Got there, saw a group of guys singing and holding bottles of whiskey or vodka floating down the river on a couch that was strapped to barrels, followed by 2 guys, one wearing a dress on a matching love seat. Turns out they knew the bride-to-be didn't like the groom-to-be's furniture. It was exceptionally second-hand. So they raided his place and emptied it of everything she didn't like as a pre-wedding present, so when she moved in it would be ready for her to fill with the right stuff. Turns out that filling the river with garbage is not legal. A few days later, they were there digging stuff out with police supervision. And it also turns out that new furniture and kitchenware is expensive. The bride was not happy. Here I was thinking the story would end in them going to jail, YOLO. I cannot tell a lie. I put that envelope under that garbage. True, like how did the cops find out? Were there cameras in the area? Maybe it was a nosy neighbor that reported them. Now we all know what the fine is for dumping furniture in the river. Did the police use 27 8x10 colored glossy pictures with circles and arrows and a paragraph on the back of each one to identify the garbage? So, I, British, didn't need to announce it, but okay, have always been mocked by my friend group for being posh. So much so that for my stag, my friends came to my door dressed as royal guards and thrust upon me a Queen Elizabeth II fancy dress outfit. We then proceeded around London on a royal-sounding pub crawl. It was a phenomenal day. Tourists and locals were, mostly, finding it hilarious. Everyone was asking for pictures. We were so popular at the Buckingham Palace gates I've even got a picture of us all with a couple of armed police officers. This was September 2022. I'll let you guess what the breaking news that afternoon was, whilst I was significantly drunk in central London, dressed as Her Majesty. That day did not end well. Oh no, that must have been September 8th, 2022 when the Queen passed. Oh Lord, imagine the tourists saying, "Nah, she can't have passed, I saw her getting drunk last night." The Queen had her chance to do the funniest thing possible and she didn't miss. One of the groomsmen jumped out of a moving car to go hit on a woman he saw walking down the street. He went home with her that night. Definitely the definition of risk it all and find out. He gambled with his safety and won. Yeah, I guess so. What blew my mind was, like, she saw him jump out of the car. Why in the world would you bring that guy home? The groom was absolutely piss drunk and we were walking to the next spot. He approaches a lady and says, "Oh my God, your dog is so beautiful. And so are you. Can I get your number?" And she says, "Yeah," but before she finishes, he goes, "Psych, I'm getting married, ha ha ha," and starts sprinting down the street and jumped over another person in the party. Just took off giggling. This is technically only fun for the person playing the joke though. Don't hit on people for fun. He wanted to see if he still got it. After all the cheating stories, hearing a drunk groom frick around and stay faithful was refreshing. As we left the strip joint to go to the next stop on a friend's stag adventure, one of the drunk groomsmen thought it would be a great idea to grab the coat check girl's tip jar and attempt to leave with it. Turns out those burly bouncer types are not only good at keeping rowdies out, they are pretty decent at tackling idiots running away carrying mini fish bowls full of cash. I didn't imagine it would be easy to steal a tip jar with the way they're paid. Mild story compared to some comments here. The stag never made it out. He got too drunk during the pre-drinks. We put him to bed and went out partying without him, saving the experience for his second marriage. Surprisingly wholesome read after the top comments. This one is horribly sad. When I was a kid, my uncle was one of a group of 5 inseparable guys. They were always together and always doing dumb, but harmless-ish. All from the same small town. One guy gets married and they have a big bachelor party at a cabin in the woods. Just a safe place to get shit-faced and do nothing that will end the marriage before it starts. Groom wakes up at like 4:30 and decides to head home early, but his car is blocked in by his buddy's car, so he leaves Buddy a note and takes the Buddy's car. Buddy's wallet is in the car. Groom tries to pass a couple cars, and the front car he is passing speeds up and won't let him pass. Another car is coming opposite way, and the car refuses to let him over. Speeds up and slows down a couple times, and the groom ends up in a collision that unalives him. Cops only find the wallet that was left in the car by car owner and go notify the wrong kid's parents that their kid has passed. Parents go to identify the body and realize it's not their kid, but is the groom. Eventually, the groom's parents sue the car owner because he left the keys in his car and that allowed their son, the groom, to drive while still impaired. He didn't make him drive the car. By the time all is said and done, several families who had been friends for years were mortal enemies who hated one another. They never located the driver who refused to be passed, but the car behind him stopped and is who called the cops and said it was 100% intentional. The guy refused to let the car in for several seconds, and it was dark and there's a steep ditch on the other side, so the groom just seems to have panicked. That ish was sad for years. I grew up knowing all the families. The groom was one of the guys who taught me to play football, and the car owner taught me to ride a motorcycle. All the families lived within a few miles of each other in a town where the high school's graduating classes were usually 20 to 25 people. The parents misplaced their anger because of their grief. Hopefully karma gets the person that caused this guy to lose his life, although I think karma is always slow. People that don't switch lanes when someone is trying to get in, especially on the highway, are definitely psychos. Holy smokes, some people are absolutely evil. How could you let someone just end like that over your traffic ego? They are also angry at the world. There is no excuse though. Over the years I've thought about this a lot, and it makes me wonder how many serial killers are out there causing auto accidents as way to hurt or end others. Now with dash cams and cameras everywhere, I would imagine it's less common, but I'm sure people did this ish on purpose in years past. Running cars off the road or swerving into oncoming traffic just long enough to make them swerve off the road. There are evil people, and with cars you can always come up with some plausible excuse if you get linked to the accident. My childhood friend's ex-fiancée decided it was alright to get raw dogged by 2 strippers at her bachelorette party. He would have never found out that it happened if it wasn't for the fact that my cousin was bartending there. He even snapped me a video when I tried to tell him he was bullshitting. It was so shocking to hear all of her friends cheering it on as she got spit roasted. It was all on me to decide whether to tell my friend or not, and I ended up telling him. She blamed me for their breakup, and even my friend stopped talking to me. I'm assuming it was out of embarrassment, but I'm not sure. Let's just say when I got married, we had a combined bachelor and bachelorette party. Takes a lot of balls to tell a friend what you told yours. This is exactly the reason people stay out of other people's relationships, because most people can't deal with honesty. Sounds like displacement of his anger onto you. I was traveling for work. About 10 p.m. I was checking into a hotel. In the lobby was a group of young women, obviously a bachelorette party. Drunk girl, but I want him. Sober girl, stop it. You're getting married tomorrow. A real friend keeps you from making bad drunk decisions. Well, for a while until they've had enough and move on from your drunk self. I got one that's completely different than you'd expect. For my bachelor party, I took some of my best friends camping and rock climbing. The area we went is known to have been sacred to Native Americans. One night, we go up to the top of the hill and are just chilling and smoking cigars. We're the only people there until we hear a group make their way to an area maybe 30 yards away. They start playing drums and other instruments and start chanting and dancing. My friends and I try to stay hidden and watch them perform this ceremony. After 30 minutes or so, they stop and are all just sitting around talking quietly. Meanwhile, one of my groomsmen lets out this earth-shattering 5-second fart. The group absolutely cracks up and everyone was howling with laughter. It's legit one of the funniest things I've ever experienced. I'm tearing up from laughing just thinking about it. One fart is funny, 2 farts is too many, and everyone stops laughing. Santa Ynez, California, hanging with my college friends who were visiting wine country where I live. I take them to an honest cowboy bar like hitching post with a few horses every night. Bachelorette party rolls, and around 9 from wine tasting and dinner they are fricked up and ready for more. My handsome and frontman roommate from college, a dude who looks so much like John Elway it's not funny, somehow starts talking to the bride-to-be, and then they disappear. 30 minutes later he comes back and says she begged him to raw dog her in the bushes outside the bar. Not a great start to a committed life. The real question is, did he raw dog her, and why did your friend go talk to her? I'm not sure I've ever heard handsome and John in the same sentence before. Went to a bachelor party years ago. Buddy had rented a large suite with a personal bartender/food service, and the football game was playing on the big screen. Suite had 2 beds in each of 3 bedrooms, and there were only 6 of us, so it was perfect. All around a great night. The games ended and the bar and food service people were packing up. Just a few minutes after they left, 3 party strippers showed up and did their thing as the party continued. We all obviously enjoyed the show, but we were pretty respectful to them considering. We offered to let them continue partying with us, and they actually did hang out for a while. The night ended with Cards Against Humanity being played as a drinking game. I don't drink myself, and it was late, so I opted out and went to bed. I awoke 2 hours later to the groom's cousin banging one of the strippers on the balcony. Good times. At least it wasn't the groom. At my friend's bachelor party a few years ago, after a night of very heavy drinking, my twin brother fell off a balcony of at least 20 feet. Thankfully, the only thing that happened as a result of the fall was a broken wrist. 20 feet is like the 2nd floor, so not a long fall. He is lucky though. Bachelor party for a friend. He invited that guy from his work to come along. We get a suite at a minor league hockey game to start. Private bar/bartender. That guy decided he wasn't being served fast enough, whipped it out and pissed on the bar when the bartender wasn't looking. At the strip club later, that guy got us thrown out for calling a dancer the N-word. Outside, we had to hold him back from assaulting some poor kid walking home from work. We eventually got him in the van. He proceeds to berate the driver for not having the balls to run over pedestrians. We dumped the racist frick in North Philly alone. I personally never saw him again, but I know he lived for at least a few years after that. Gone now. Good riddance. Don't be that guy. Some intrusive thought should not be acted on. I was at a bachelor party in Key West. We were at a bar and the server recently had a baby. Had huge tits. Someone made a commentary and she asked us if the bachelor wanted a white Russian. She proceeded to make a white Russian with her breast milk. And upcharged us. You can't put a price on milk live and direct from the source. I didn't believe the Key West rumors until my ex and I were in the back of a bar's private pool bar being served a Corona by a naked sailor with a bull ring. A naked, chain-smoking Frenchman was attempting to talk to me, but I couldn't understand him. Seemed nice, though. Strippers bent over the kitchen counter with bags of blow. Slap down 100, wrap up, rip a line, and go in from behind. The entire party of about 40 guys formed a line to get into the kitchen. Me and my buddy split. Wild night, not sure why I thought the bag of blow meant dildo. I was invited to a bachelor party that was in the community rec center of an apartment complex. The crazy thing was this particular building was designed with a nautical theme, so the rec center room was on the ground floor between two buildings and it was shaped in a dome covered in porthole windows. This meant that everyone could easily see into the building. 2 strippers showed up and they were about 20 minutes into their show, which included them hammering each other with giant dildos, and the cops showed up. The people not invited called the cops. An acquaintance of mine went to a strip club for his bachelor party. The dancers took him up on stage and tied him to a pole, then provocatively danced all over him, removing his clothes piece by piece. Every guy in the place started making bachelor party plans for that club. Then the dancers pulled his underwear off and left him tied up there flopping nakedly in the breeze, and all of those fresh bachelor party plans got canceled. The worst part is that when they freed him, he jokingly tried to scale the pole, still naked, and they kicked him out over it. So, when he does it, it's no longer fun. Sounds like a great way to alienate your customers. I had a friend who bartended at a strip club. She used to get me in for free, and I'd just hang out with her and drink some and chat with the girls when it was slow. That's when she could get me in free. One night I'm in there and this bachelor party comes in. Turns out it was one of the girl's fiancé, who didn't know she was a dancer as she told him she did other things for work. Well, she had been, but hated the job and money and left to dance, and just told him she had changed positions in her company. They got into it, bouncer got involved, they led the guy out, where he proceeded to get a gun, then get tackled by the entire security team. Police were called. It wasn't pretty. Kept me there for hours because they had the entire parking lot blocked off. So she was dressing all professional to the strip club? Bachelor party, and saw the soon-to-be groom getting blown by his best man on a party bus as I went to use the bathroom in the back. This was 15-ish years ago. Those two have been a couple for like 5 years now. 5 years that you know of. Group of super religious guys I knew. One was getting married like my sophomore year of college during the summer. Met up with them at a local elementary school where they proceeded to put on diapers and have races around the playground. I passed. They then went to the lake where they read Bible verses. I got bored and left. Cringy. Groom tied naked to a chair, received a lap dance, followed by a BJ from an equally nude stripper, as about 100 guests looked on, including his father and future father-in-law. What the, like a rite of passage? Where did this people find 100 guests? How could a dad handle watching that and knowing his daughter is marrying it? Also, 100 people that would watch that is what's wrong with the world. Groom's family is very wealthy and very prominent. Maybe he thought it was a small price to pay. For the people watching, few if any were sober, though no one expected the BJ. It's an old money tradition, peasant. A father must watch. Went to a strip club for a stag party. Most of the night was relatively normal until this one stripper came to our table who was clearly drugged up and rather trashy. So we immediately buy a dance for the groom from her. She stood him up, pushed him back into a table to where his head was slightly hanging over the edge, walked around to the other side and shoved her bum right in his face, while grabbing his head and pulling it more in. I'll never forget the sight of that and his arms flailing in the air. Ah, the backdoor butterfly. And that's how you get pink eye. My friend/co-worker's bachelor party held at his apartment building. Everything going great. Stripper, booze, etc. Then one of his friends tries to scale the outside of the apartment building by climbing up a large conduit. Partway up he fell and ended up breaking his back. Hopefully, this is not the story he tells his kids. NSFW. I used to bounce at few strip clubs. One of them had a weekly stag night, which means that there were male dancers at least one night a week. The usual is bridesmaid or bride dares to blow the dancer. I've seen them do the lipstick challenge, which is each woman wears a different shade of lipstick and then see who can get theirs the furthest. It's a deep throat challenge, LOL. This includes family members that show up. Your grandma was involved. craziest was went outside to smoke, heard some women arguing, and one of the dancers is surrounded by 3 generations of the same family trying to decide who was going to get a turn with him first. Grandma was wild in her day. She's probably thinking this is nothing, step aside. I'm blown away by this comment. Porn intended. But grandma blowing strippers with her daughter/granddaughter. That's too wild, man. Grandma always wins, she just pops her teeth out. She's got the oxygen hookup, there's no stopping her. I've told this story before. I was invited by a friend at the last minute to a stag night in Atlanta for a group I didn't know. I grabbed a bag, packed for any and every occasion. Arrived at the groom's house to catch the coming limo when I heard a loud bang followed by cursing. Yep, the groom had been showing off his new .22 pistol and had accidentally shot the best man in the calf muscle. Rest of the night got weird. Random housewives blowing wedding party members in front of the crowd, strippers, IVs, dominatrix, and general chaos. All with a best man limping around with a fresh gunshot and a groom with a 20-pound bowling ball chained to his leg. I learned 2 things. 1, I didn't pack for any and every occasion. 2, EMTs party harder than any group alive, and we should all be scared of them. Now we all know how to get away with a crime. My girlfriend went to a bachelorette party in Savannah, Georgia. If you've been, you know there are insanely steep, cobblestone stairs by the river. Long story short, the bride of the party my girlfriend was with threw another girl in another bachelorette party down these stairs. She was knocked unconscious and bled everywhere. They rushed her to the hospital. The bride who pushed the girl started receiving calls from the police and started ducking the calls. The other party of girls has been trying pretty hard to find her and press charges, but she's been avoiding them ever since. My girlfriend and the rest of the girls from the party didn't attend the wedding and don't speak to this girl anymore. I don't know if there even was a wedding. The bride was basically talking about cheating on her party at the bachelorette party too. She's a mess, lol. Indeed. There was a post on Reddit about a stag party where the groom was ultimately left tied up to a street light on the main drag. He ended up getting ripped by a hobo. He moved to another state and was never heard from again. Jizz. Groom was so drunk that he didn't realize the dancer was not really a cop and not really arresting him, so he stood up into her front teeth. Emergency oral surgery for her, dozens of stitches, and a turban of bandages for the wedding, which almost didn't happen for him. Strippers should start wearing headgear once the crowd is drunk. Bachelor party in Vegas. We're in a hotel room and someone has arranged for 2 strippers to come to the room. They were sketchy, and that's being nice. Looked like they were definitely strung out. So, they dance and are sort of doing their thing, then they go around the room looking for tips and offering private dances. One of the guys there starts going down on the stripper in the middle of the room. Between, he was one of the few married ones. The rest of us sort of look around like, what the F? We all make our way out to the balcony to smoke and wait for that ish to end. It's always the married ones, like he had no shame left in him. A bunch of guys dressed as nuns on a stag beating the ish out of another group of guys in a pub. It was a pretty big pub where drinks and glass were flying everywhere, and folks were trying their best to avoid the chaos, but the fight was moving all over the place. My mate tried to hide in the disabled toilet, but there was already someone in there hiding. It turns out the nuns were bouncers on their night off, and they had a run-in with these guys the night or weekend before. The nuns had a score to settle. Also, a very sad one, guys having a bachelor party, getting shit-faced and all. Then they decide to play stupid games. One was that the groom wears rubber boots, and they spray construction foam into the boots so he cannot undress them. They fall asleep later, the groom in his boots. Next day they had to rush to the hospital as he couldn't feel his feet no more. Turns out they had to amputate both legs under the knees. All guys involved were prosecuted and the bride canceled the marriage and relationship. Turns out she wanted a guy that had a leg to stand on. Sad. I'm at a bachelor party at a bar and talked to the groom briefly during a smoke. He casually mentioned that he had fricked 4 prostitutes that day, presumably paid for by his buddies, and perhaps the buddies also got a piece of some of that action. I wonder how well that marriage lasted. Who knows, finance is the main cause of divorce, so maybe not the same, but cool story anyway. I wasn't there, but my best friend held a bachelor party at his house for a bunch of dudes that used to be in high school with him. He was single. Anyway, an escort was called, and she provided whatever service for whoever wanted it. She took credit cards, but couldn't run the machine at my friend's house because he didn't have a landline anymore back in the early 2000s. So, when someone wanted services, they would go to the neighbor's house and connect the machine to the landline, run the transaction, etc. His neighbor, a single older man. Fast forward a couple of weeks later, and we're driving down the road and he gasps and I said, "What the hell, dude?" He then points to a billboard with a picture of a real estate woman, very beautiful woman, and says that she is the same woman that came to his house that night for the bachelor party. He said it's definitely her, later corroborated by the neighbor, same name she used as escort as the billboard. Working the residential market by day and companionship market by night. Bachelor party I was at. We hired a stripper for the Stag. She was pretty full on. Put a vibrator in his mouth and sat on his face with the vibrator going up her bum. Lit a candle and drilled hot wax all over him, then stuck the lit candle up his bum and whipped it out. The full-on service was paid for and received. Not something I witnessed, but I remember reading about a guy went on a stag night, I am hoping not his own, and managed to impregnate 3 women, who all had the baby, and he was present throughout the pregnancy and birth for each, and he was in the paper after the birth with the different mothers, if not on the same day, within a week of each other. He was on a mission to be a father that night. Buddy of mine full on tongue punched the stripper for a solid 5 minutes. He had no experience prior to that, and it was a bit cringy. Did that in front of a group of 30 plus people? What part of her did he tongue punch? Key info missing. Bachelor party. Police officer came for noise complaint. The stripper got in a chair and shot a fireball out of her vag. The officer grabbed his gun at his side and ran out the door. Shots fired. My friend got engaged within 9 months or so of meeting this chick. He hadn't quit drinking, but he hadn't been drunk in the 9 months they were together. They had a bachelor and bachelorette party that eventually met up. Horrible idea. They had said earlier in the day that they had never seen each other drunk, and since they were getting married, it'd be a good idea to have this knowledge of each other. One thing I knew that she didn't was that her fiancé was a nice and great guy when sober, but when drunk, there was about a 50-50 chance he'd turn into a violent maniac. Well, that 50% chance happened, and he beat the ish out of her brother and dad. Why? Because he was a drunken maniac and they were kind of douchebags anyway. What in the Real Housewives? Bloke from work had a one-night stand on his stag. A month or so later she got in touch to explain she was pregnant. He told his wife-to-be, called off the wedding, and is now married to the one-night stand. Frick knows how they explain meeting when people ask. That's a shotgun wedding, all right. Buddy of mine had my bachelor party at his house. My friends hired 2 strippers, who did the usual stripper stuff. I was very wary and managed to not get hurt or humiliated too much. Things were going well. That is, until they asked if anyone wanted to eat strawberry jam out of their cooters. 2 of my friends jumped at the chance and ate those nasties. Thought it was great. The next day my buddy said he found used bloody tampons in the bathroom trash. Never told the other guys. His house smelled like stale punting for a few days. Gross, oh my, emotional damage. These guys were drunk walking on the side of the road, about 12 people after the McGregor vs. Mayweather fight. These guys went through 2 kegs plus all of the liquor that was involved in just a few hours. Well, this one dude sees an empty toilet on the side of the road, obviously left out for free, and decides he needs to pee. Well, that pressure of peeing made him decide right then and there that he needed to take a giant deuce right into that dry toilet. This thing coiled up and out like a goddamn cobra waiting to strike. Complete jackass vibes, except instead of walking into a hardware store with a newspaper and toilet paper, he just had his boxers to wipe his ass and the look of his friends' faces to concentrate on. Who the frick does that? Like actually? That dude was me. I knew there was going to be a poop story. Stripper blew a peeled banana until it formed a goo on the outside, then she gave herself a facial with it. Then she pinned the bachelor to the floor, knees on shoulders. She took off his glasses, smeared the lenses with her labia, completely coating them with secretions. Then she put them back on his face. He was horrified. The fiancée nearly broke off the wedding because she wasn't even aware there would be an entertainer at the party. Actual contact was a huge trust violation. That's that goop facial. I was the bodyguard for a stripper at a bachelor party years ago. I was tall and fit, though not anywhere well set or prepared for the job. It was the second and last time I did that. Anyway, it was LA in the early 90s and the house was in gangland. The stripper was pretty upset with the service that booked it as we drove there, almost backed out as we drove in. It was like 30 guys in a shitty house, and I was supposed to be crowd control and the money guy. Collected about $1,500 as she went through the routine. Plenty of build up to naked, then one was where they'd lay down $20 bills and she'd pick them up with her P-lips and pass them to me. That was popular. Another was where there was big thing to gather cash to get her to do herself with a dildo. So that happened. At the end the groom got a lap dance and laid folded bills on his lap and she picked them up with her labia. He took his dyke out and the guys put bills on that, which was against the rules, but she went ahead and did it. And that was the end of the show. One of the arrangements was to have a room for her to change and then a separate exit, which we didn't quite get. When we shut things down, we more or less barricaded ourselves into a side room. The only door was into the main room with all the worked up drunk gangbangers. I had hundreds of dollars stuffed in all my pockets, and we could hear and feel the guys in the rest of the house literally bouncing off the walls and having rowdy fights, crank music, knocking holes through the drywall, all that kind of thing. We wound up leaving through a window and racing halfway down the block to the car, full speed away. I got 30% of the take, but that was my last time doing that. What the horror! Took a limo bus with a bunch of guys from VA to WVA to go to a fully nude strip club. VA they had to wear bikini bottoms and pastes, WVA was fully nude. It was about an hour and a half ride. There was about a dozen of us, including the groom. We drank heavily on the way there. Once we got to the club we were all pretty drunk. We paid our cover charges and made our way to the stage. There were a couple girls up dancing, and since it was still somewhat early, the place was still kinda slow. One of the girls makes her way over to our group and starts dancing for us. She's got her legs spread and leaning back on her hands, kinda thrusting towards us. The best man hollers out, "Temperature check," and then proceeded to lick his index finger and jam it all the way up to the last knuckle inside of her. We were all immediately thrown out of the place. We were there all of 5 minutes. It was a long and quiet ride home. Way to ruin the day for everyone. At a Bucks party, a single guy had to lie on the floor with a vibrator in his mouth whilst the stripper bounced up and down. He ended up having to bite so hard on it that he broke his front tooth and had a large dental bill. It was either that or choked to death, so he probably chose wisely. What happened to his hands? I asked a bachelor party concierge in Medellin this exact question. He said it's always the Russians that go to the extremes. One group paid a woman so that they could remove some of her teeth with pliers. So, what was the going rate for that kind of thing? Went to a stag party off base near an Air Force base where A-10 and B-2 pilots were sending off a fellow pilot. It was already crazy and getting crazier when the stripper called in her stripper friends. Quite a lot of public nudity and in the open cunnilingus. The craziest thing I saw at this particular crazy party was near the end of the night when the homeowner's greyhound rescue dog buried his muzzle quite deeply between the butt cheeks of the best man, who was nude and unconscious, laying face down on the floor with mustard all over his anus. I decided to leave at that point. The dog was willing to risk it all. We've come to the end. Leave your thoughts in the comment section. Please like, share, subscribe for more. Bye.